me. Hi, everybody. My name is Catherine Carlton. I have many roles I'll share with you. I'm currently the CEO of Sapiens Impact. I'm the former Mayor of Menlo Park, but I'm also a student at Vanderbilt University on trust and doing a great deal of work that I'm going to share with you today. So the funny thing about trust is that most people feel that they are trustworthy, and kind of like everybody thinks they're good at driving a car, but not everybody is. Everyone thinks that they're good at building trust, but some are better than others, as we might know. And so I'm going to share some science with you, some research on trust, and how to facilitate trust when we're working remotely. Right now, so much is happening because of COVID. People are working around the world, and it's really important that we find new and better ways to facilitate trust. But why is trust important? What's the big deal? Well, 55% of the CEOs in a Harvard Business Review study that they did on the Fortune 500 companies said that trust was one of the critical things that they had to deal with in terms of survival of their companies. But more than half of them had no idea how to make it better. So as we start talking about the importance of trust and how we're going to deal with it, we talk about what are the different types of trust. Well, there's first of all, ethos, pathos, and logos was what Aristotle spoke about when he talked about communication and how we trust with one another. Logos is the logic. It is 2 + 2 = 4. We're not talking about that kind of prefrontal cortex kind of logic. We're talking about the ethos and the pathos. We're talking about the limbic system level of trust. Do I trust that you're going to feed my dog when I leave town? Kind of trust. The trust that when someone comes to speak, they bring in their titles and how they speak, how they present themselves, but also the trust that comes from the audience and the notions that you have previous to coming in. So those are the ethos, pathos, and logos. And we're going to be dealing with the limbic system. And I always do this because it's about this big. It's got the amygdala, all of that right in the center of your brain. And as we talk about trust, the advantage to mankind of being able to trust one another penetrates into every crevice and crevice in our lives. And we call it the triple bottom line. We talk about that in business a great deal, but there's also a trust that happens in people. The trust in the individual, there's a trust that impacts society as a whole, and the trust that impacts our businesses as well. And the first one we will go through is talking about trust in communities. A lot of the research that's come forward on countries with high levels of trust get more foreign direct investment. This is critical for the countries to facilitate better business and better economics. Also, better business practices happen in places where companies and people trust one another, and the economy as a whole will benefit in higher trust environments. And the thing coming from this, I don't know how many of you studied economics, microeconomics, macroeconomics. After the end of it, you get to the end and they say, oh, well, all of this works mathematically, but in the real world, this doesn't happen so much because people aren't logical. Well, guess what? People are a little bit more logical than you'd think. And as we come forward with this, the whole idea of neuroeconomics comes through, that you have these levels of human need that will factor into the decision making. And as we start factoring these in, all the economics begins to make a lot more sense. And this is part of what is factoring into the research that's being done currently in trust. So trust, as we said before, first helps the countries. The next level of trust is for the individual. We've got 106% more energy at work, 56% higher job satisfaction. People are more productive. People actually make better decisions, not shockingly, because they're able to communicate better, because they trust each other, right? But also, it bleeds into their private life. People in a high trust environment at work come home and feel happier with their families at home. Not only does it affect them psychologically and better to function in the world, it also helps them physically. People working in high trust environments have less cancer, less heart disease. It actually helps you even with osteoporosis, with diabetes, and with gut problems. There's a nerve called the vagus nerve that attaches your limbic system to your stomach. So when you're in an environment where you feel like you're not being trusted and you get a knot in your stomach, literally that is a physical nerve that's being activated. And a lot of research, interestingly, says that if you're really, really uptight and you can't get that nerve to relax in your stomach, even taking probiotics can help you think better. Because when your amygdala is super, super stressed out, it will shut down your prefrontal cortex. And this is why when you're really scared or really angry, you have trouble finding your words. So if you want to be able to think better, if you want to be physically better, trust is actually something that will facilitate this on an individual basis. Now, on the organizational performance, not a shocker. People are making better decisions. People are having fewer sick days. People stay in their jobs longer, and the end result is a more profitable business. And this is going on so much that the research shows that about $10,000 per employee can be brought in by just facilitating a better trust environment. And we're finding with the venture capitalist and with the media that ranks companies, they're using trust as an indicator now on how they expect that company to perform in the future. So more and more, this is becoming a standard level of what people are looking at and moving forward. So we're all working together, everything's great, kumbaya, and then COVID happens, right? And then suddenly we're working remotely. And it is not surprising that working remotely means less trust. Why is that? Well, we have less trust because I can't look into your eyes as well and see you blink. I can't read your body language. Interestingly, if you touch someone, not creepy touch, but hand on the shoulder, shake hands, you have a 30% higher chance of having a successful negotiation if you shake hands or touch someone or have physical contact in some way. It makes the oxytocin release. And people think oxytocin is the love hormone. It is not. It is, I call it the mama bear hormone or the tribe hormone. If you and I are talking and we're jiving and the oxytocin's flowing and a third person comes in that we perceive as being an outsider, we will react much more violently to that third person than we would do otherwise. It really is a tribal thing. It's an evolutionary thing, the oxytocin that we share with one another. And Zoom exhaustion. There's so much interesting research happening on Zoom exhaustion. It's not just something that we think we feel, it's a fact. And they're saying that your brain has trouble going back and forth between picture to picture. Your brain is aching. Your limbic system wants all these other symbols to tell it what it's thinking about the individual. And it doesn't get that. And it begins to wear out. And as we'll speak to later, it actually begins to impact how you process information when you're Zooming. So people conferencing are more influenced by heuristic cues than by the logic. That it's so different in how the information is coming through. You're more impacted, weirdly, by how much you find someone likable. You actually lose some of that logic. So if you're having a Zoom call and you have a lot of very detailed information you're trying to convey to someone, be aware of the fact that it will be harder and you will have to be more exact and clear as you go through because your brain's still trying to figure out whether they like you or not. This is just oddly what the research is showing. So trust levels with new people, again, not surprising, but you gotta have scientists tell you these things sometimes. If I've never met you before and we speak on the phone, my limbic system brain is going, I don't know who this is. I don't know if I trust him, okay. But if we meet at Volcano, even if we meet grabbing a cup of coffee, you don't have to go away for the weekend and have some team building thing. If you have met that individual and you remember them, when you talk on the phone, when you're Zooming, your limbic system says, oh yeah, I remember that person, okay. And it begins the process faster. Now, you can build trust working remotely only. It just takes more effort. It just takes more time. And these are ways of being able to build it faster, deeper, more quickly than having to build this up. So spending time in person is like putting money in the bank. The more time we spend together, the more I'm going to trust you in the limbic system as we work remotely. If we don't ever see each other or we don't work remotely enough, eventually it begins to wear off. So here's the key question. We know trust is super important, right? We know that we have to spend some time in person unless we're going to be Zooming all the time. What we don't know is how much time do we need to spend to invest to keep that level of trust going? And we talk to some people and they're like, well, we get our salespeople together 1 week every quarter. Is that enough? We don't know. Is it 1 day a week? Is it 1 week a month? How much do we really need to be Zooming and in person to keep this going? And so that's what I'm going to be researching. That's what I'm going to be doing my doctorate on. If it goes forward. And as we do this research, hopefully we will also find other indicators and other things that we can do. Because let's face it, we're going to be working remotely. Whether there's a plague, whether it's people working from country to country, it's just part of the new norm. In any ways that we can find to help add those levels of trust, all the better. Now, as we start doing the research then, people are terrible at knowing what they trust because their mind says, oh, that's my mother, that's my neighbor, that's whatever, and you will report that you trust things when your limbic system's saying, yeah, not so much. You know, I may say I trust that person, but am I gonna go buy that car? No, maybe not. So we use external methods to be able to better accurately measure trust and be able to make decisions from that. Social dilemma games. We always see these games that people play. They're even turning them into TV shows now. So social media games are fun, and they're really good at identifying what makes people cooperate, but they're not very good at the methodology of getting you there. fMRI machines are sexy. You see these things and they got little bits that light up and you can see exactly which point's going. I love fMRI machines. They're so cool. They are expensive. My God, they're expensive. It's also really hard to get time in one. And to have statistically significant numbers of people being researched, it's a problematic thing, even though they're very cool. Also, they are still kind of a snapshot look at what's happening in people's brains. So what do we use? Oxytocin. We can actually measure people's oxytocin. And fundamentally, we cooperate because our brains motivate us to cooperate. They give us serotonin, they give us dopamine, they give us oxytocin. You know, whether we decide to date this person or do business with another, the hormones are really kind of what's driving a lot of our decision making. And it's really fun to look at a lot of the research. There are literally, I think it was 150 different individual research projects in the past 20 years involving oxytocin. So it's pretty well established, and some of the findings are really interesting. Why is it great? Oxytocin is accurate, it's cost effective, it's pretty easy. It's easy to anonymize when you're doing research, and it's relatively real time. I can test you before and after a meeting and tell what happened to your oxytocin levels. Now, how do you do it? Blood test. Blood tests stink. I don't know anyone who likes blood tests. So that's the most accurate way, but saliva tests, again, a little icky, but they're pretty accurate way. They're now developing an immersion band that goes around your wrist that can also measure oxytocin release. So whether you use the immersion band with the saliva or however you do it, depending on what research you're doing, there's some pretty accurate and interesting and less invasive than blood test ways of testing people's oxytocin. The next one is pretty cool. Now, how many of you play poker? Some people. So, interesting thing about poker, and also diamond merchants know this too. I was told by a diamond merchant in New York, when you see something you like, whether it's the opposite sex, a dog, an advertisement that you like, or a royal flush, your eyes dilate. And poker players and diamond merchants are really good at honing in on that and seeing when, and you can't control it, it just gives you away. And this is why a lot of poker players wear sunglasses and hats and things to kind of try and hide their eyes, is because they know this is just a thing. Interestingly, as you talk to people, you start getting pupil mimicry. And you're not aware of this, but your limbic system is. And funnily enough, as soon as your limbic system says, oh, we're getting pupil dilation, this is awesome. And then you start producing more oxytocin, and it becomes this big flood of happy, trusty stuff going on in your brain. Meanwhile, your prefrontal cortex is like, I don't know, 2 + 2 = 4, you know. But your limbic system has decided miles beforehand whether or not they're going to trust this person inherently or not. And weirdly, you can actually spray oxytocin up someone's nose and get pupil mimicry. Some of the research is really fun and maybe a little creepy. So the advantage of using Tobii glasses, Tobii Glass is a really interesting company, and this is their 3rd version, so they're getting better and less battery on your shoulder-ish. They're 90% accurate, they're easily anonymizable, they're pretty cheap, And they are precisely accurate. And they're using them for advertisements, for example. So you can see exactly what word resonates with someone. The reason I think this company is kind of cool too is they have a long list on their website of what they will not allow you to do. They will not sell you these glasses if you do research for cigarettes, for government politics. They have this whole list of what they don't want it being used for interesting reasons. So it's kind of makes me trust the company as well. Now, the interesting thing as well is no research has shown if we get pupil mimicry when we're using Zoom. I assume we would if it's face-to-face, but nobody's really looked into it yet. You can't assume in scientific research. So the first thing I'm going to do is do research to establish whether or not you get the pupil mimicry and how big the screen has to be and this sort of thing to be able to establish that baseline. And I'm going to be using the oxytocin research, the pupilometry, all this, to basically have a better understanding of the impact of in-person meetings and time on the level of trust that we have, and help identify even more factors to help people be able to work remotely and work with a really good level of trust as we move forward, because the technology is great. We just have to figure out better ways of tweaking, better ways of working ourselves to make it work better for us. And this shows what a geek I am. This is a tiny bit of some of the articles that I have. I have stacks and stacks at home. So if anyone would like to geek out with me and learn more about what's happening in the research world with trust, with oxytocin, with pupil mimicry, with any of these things, I would be delighted to email you my bibliography list. If anyone else is interested and also doing work like this, let me know, because I might have missed something really cool. So I'll give you all my details, and please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to share. One of the great things about Volcano is building bridges, is building that trust and that communication across Guatemala, across Latin America, across the world. And if we start working together, even if it's different research, the woman that drove the bus taking me down from the cocktail party last night, oh, it was you. She actually has a degree in neuroscience. And so we're going to swap information and share articles. The more we work together, many minds make a better solution. And they also show, research shows from Harvard Business Review, the more diverse the people in the room, the better the decision making. Sometimes you can have someone who's a teacher who knows about learning, talking with a neuroscientist who's actually a brain scientist, talking to someone who's more of a neuroeconomist, such as myself, all working together on a similar thing can come up with a better solution than a homogenized group. And I think that's true from language, from cultures, from all the different ways that one can be diverse. So hopefully we can all work together and find better ways to build trust and have a better future. So I know we're running late, so I tried to keep this tight. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer, or you can speak to me afterwards. Thank you so much.